A frail woman miraculously gave birth to an 11-pound baby boy after only 2 months of pregnancy. However, instead of caring for him, she wanted to devour him, so she grabbed the baby and threw him into the fire. She was so hungry, she couldn't think, she just wanted to eat meat. Suddenly, a thunderous sound awakened the last trace of humanity within the woman. She ran out of the wooden hut, driven by madness, and never returned. Fortunately, a downpour extinguished the flames, and the child survived. In these times of war, floods and droughts came one after another. The peasants lost their harvests and their bodies were left scattered all over. They had only one sweet potato left, which had to be divided among them. At that moment, someone rushed in with an axe. There were screams in the house. Soon, a small boy emerged from the house, chewing on flesh and blood. He was the abandoned child, transformed into a beast to survive, relying on the axe left by his mother. Rumors of a cannibal monster spread throughout the village. As the rain poured down once again, the boy encountered an old monk who he intended to attack, but the monk swiftly subdued him with his superior martial arts. The monk could tell right away that he had eaten people. In the boy, he seemed to see the epitome of this chaotic era. Determined to enlighten him, the monk brought the boy back to his mountain cave. Using food as an incentive, the monk encouraged the boy to speak and recited scriptures together. It was the first time the boy spoke in his life. The monk named him Asura and instructed him to continuously recite the scriptures as a means to control the beast within his heart. One day, a group of farmers was tasked with transporting wood to a high platform. One of the boys collapsed from hunger. Asura, thinking he was dead, wanted to eat him, but he was kicked away by another man. The man then tossed a rice ball, which Asura eagerly snatched up like a wild beast. After finishing the rice ball, Asura didn't leave and instead followed them. Suddenly, the villagers were blocked by a young man named Kotaro, the son of a landlord. Kotaro didn't like the peasants dirtying his land. He kept hitting them with stones accidentally. He injured Asura, who was following behind. Enraged, Asura lunged at Kotaro and bit off his neck. Kotaro's followers immediately ran back to the landlord's house to report the incident. The landlord, Yoshimura, rode up on horseback in a rage. He wanted to kill Asura in pieces. The trembling farmers knelt before him. Yoshimura swung his sword, causing Asura to fall off a cliff, landing amidst a pile of bones. Asura miraculously survived but sustained severe injuries. He couldn't leave this place and could only satisfy his hunger by catching a lizard on the ground. Suddenly, a crow swooped down and began pecking at his leg. In an attempt to drive away the crow, Asura fell into another deep pit. He didn't want to die. He tried to crawl towards the light. It was then that a girl found him. Her name was Wakasa, a villager from nearby. In Wakasa's embrace, Asura felt warmth for the first time. She brought him to a watermill house and handed him a rice ball. Excitedly, Asura bit into the rice ball and climbed onto the roof. Hiding, he felt a bit shy. The next morning, Wakasa arrived at the small wooden house with a rice ball as promise. Asura began to attempt speaking, and Wakasa persistently taught him more words. Winter turned into spring, and they remained by each other's side. When Wakasa went to work in the fields, Asura would hide in a nearby tree, waiting for her to return home. Wakasa was all Asura could think about. She was his playmate, his mother, and his everything. Until one day Wakasa had a lover. Asura felt lonely and jealous for the first time. One day, Wakasa hurriedly left the food at the doorstep of the wooden house and walked away. Asura thought she was abandoning him and followed her, grabbing a sickle without thinking. The wild beast within him seemed to awaken. However, instead of blaming him, Wakasa was afraid that Asura might hurt himself. Ashamed, Asura lowered his head, and the sickle slipped from his hand. Wakasa made him a delicious mushroom soup. But then she hurried off with the man. Another rainy day arrived, and Asura waited for Wakasa to return home. He watched from a distance as Wakasa ran towards the wooden house. Excitedly, Asura ran back home, only to find it empty, with only himself inside. Rainwater dripped down from his forehead, as if representing his tears. Thunder roared, and Asura picked up the axe again. He appeared in front of the man's house. Outside the door he hears that Wakasa wants to leave with the man. Unable to bear it any longer, Asura raised the axe and wounded the man's shoulder, but Wakasa protected the man, and Asura, filled with anger, didn't want to harm her. He could only use the axe to repeatedly strike the ground in frustration. Asura felt what it was like to be a human being with Wakasa. Now Wakasa herself called him an animal. Asura's heart shattered. He walked out of the wooden house, his steps aimless. In his pain, Asura once again encountered the monk. He vented his frustrations to the master, expressing his disbelief in human nature and his acceptance of being a beast. The monk saw Asura's pain. But knowing pain is the proof that Asura is human, the master hoped that Asura would continue to overcome the beast within him. He took the axe from Asura's hand, severed his own arm, and handed it to Asura, urging him to devour it. Asura stepped back, eventually running away. He no longer wanted to be human, but he had already become one. However, the prolonged drought worsened the famine. Wakasa also became emaciated from hunger. The hungry Wakasa saw a gecko on the ground and reached out to grab it. Asura witnessed all of this and didn't want Wakasa to die. So, under the cover of darkness, he attacked the landlord's stable and cut off a piece of meat from one of the horses. He brought it to Wakasa's home. However, this attack exposed Asura's whereabouts. Yoshimura, realizing that Asura was still alive, gathered all the villagers to hunt him down, offering a year's supply of food as a bounty. Greed gleamed in the eyes of the people. In the meantime, Asura arrived at Wakasa's home and placed the horse meat on the table, urging her to eat. Wakasa couldn't help but gag. She grabbed the meat and was about to eat it, but suddenly she threw the meat back. Wakasa thought it was human flesh. Asura quickly explained that it was horse meat, not human flesh. Wakasa refused to eat, but her father disregarded whether it was human or horse meat. Asura split the meat in half, and the old man greedily devoured it, then ran outside to inform Yoshimura. Meanwhile, Asura continued to persuade Wakasa to eat the meat because he wanted her to survive. However, Wakasa firmly believed that Asura had killed someone again. She'd rather starve to death than eat human flesh. It would make her suffer for the rest of her life. Asura was so angry. He simply wanted Wakasa to eat the meat and was scared of being left alone if she died. It was the second time Asura shed tears, but Wakasa still didn't believe him. By this time, their house was surrounded by villagers. Asura swung his axe and broke through the crowd. He didn't want to kill anymore, but the villagers were relentless and chased him relentlessly. He ran, eventually being forced to a field by Yoshimura. Under the blood-red moonlight, Yoshimura brandished his sword and attacked Asura. However, Asura successfully fought back and killed Yoshimura, but he had to keep running as all the villagers were still after him, wanting to kill him. His leg was injured, and he was cornered on a bridge. The villagers set fire to the bridge, and Asura kept running forward. He wanted to keep living but fell into despair and plunged into the abyss. Aren't we all the same? In order to survive, everyone becomes a beast. Asura, who miraculously survived, encountered Wakasa once again, but she had already starved to death in this chaotic world. Some people become beasts for survival, while others persist in kindness. Asura overcame his inner beast and became a true human. He no longer had any attachments and would continue his practice in this chaotic world.